Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the show. Fernando.
Welcome, guys.
Today we start a multi-part series that's being brought to you by the fine folks at Ground Zero Engineering. Back in February, when we were out in California at Long Beach, Ground Zero reached out to us and asked us if we'd be interested in using some of their equipment to put a car together for them to show at one of the Knowledge Fests. And we were like, yeah, sure, why not? Today starts the series, and what we're gonna be focusing on today is their sound treatment. They have a full line of it, and well, you know what? Let's just get started. We have the Ground Zero GZDM 2-door kit. Now this door kit is designed to stop vibration, increase acoustic performance, and also do heat insulation. It's a full door treatment package. There's 3 different types of material in here. Let's open it up and take a look. First off is the instructions. They talk about tools that you use, which we'll cover in a minute. They explain what each one of the materials is for, but let's show you the materials and we'll go back and look at this. First up is 4 sheets of high efficiency sound absorbing foam, egg crate foam. This is going to be for the door panel or the door card. It has adhesive on the back, so it's just going to stick to it and make any vibration or sound waves or anything that's happening to that physical panel. 2 sheets for one door, 2 sheets for the other door. 2 sheets of 5/16 of an inch waterproof high density noise dampening foam. This is made to be cut and put inside the back of the actual physical car's door frame. So the metal part, after you put the sound treatment on it, this is going to go inside of the big flat panels. There's one for one side and one for the other. And then of course this stuff here, there's 8 sheets of the sound treatment. Has an aluminum on one side which is black so you don't see it through any grills or anything like that, and of course the butyl rubber on the other side. It has a nice grid on the front to make it easy to cut and see what's going on. 4 sheets for one door, 4 sheets for the other. Going back to the instructions, they basically walk you through the process of the steps you need in order to use all 3 of their materials. But have no fear, the reason why we're doing this is so we can show you where all these materials go. Now let's take a look at some of the tools you're going to need for this installation. Anytime you go to start a project like this, there are a few things you're going to want. First off, you're going to want to grab some gloves so you don't cut your fingers on the aluminum. You'll want a knife and some scissors if you have them to cut the material. And then you'll want to use a roller, and Fernando likes to use a plastic panel tool to really get in there and rub the stuff into place. It does corners really well. And of course a screwdriver and whatever tools it takes to get the actual door panel off the car. Each car is going to be a little bit different. We've got our kit, we've got our tools. Let's head over to the door and we'll start the process of making this door heavy, sound dead, and just no vibration. So it will have tremendous amounts of mid bass, which is what we like. And that's the reason why you do this. When you have a speaker mounted on the door and it has the ability to move and flex, well, the speaker's moving, and then if the surface that it's mounted to is moving, you're gonna get cancellation. And that nice deep mid bass that you're hoping to get, well, it's not gonna be there. You're gonna lose it all because the speaker's gonna, yeah, it's gonna suck. The other thing too that a lot of people like to use this for is to kill road noise. That egg crate foam on the inside of the door panel is going to help to kill that road noise. If you have a car, a lot of Toyotas, because they're just noisy vehicles, and that will help quiet that down. There is some basic principles when starting to take off your door panel if you've never done it before. First, of course, as we talked about, you need some tools. One of the most popular tools is going to be a panel tool. This is it. This is what is used 90% of the time for getting up behind your door card here and removing those panels. If you're worried about scratching this guy here, this is a giant panel tool that is super rigid and super strong, just like the metal ones. And then something a little bit softer, which we use the most of the time, is this little shoehorn style wedge here, a micro panel tool, and then last but not least, a 90-degree pick tool is great for getting up behind panels to pull off little clips and or push down on harnesses that are just too small for your fingers to get in. If you'd like to get a set of these for yourself, make sure to head over to DNF Tool Drawer. We have lists of all the tools that we use and links to buy them. The first step is always to look behind the handle and see if there's a clip there. It is a wonderful place that manufacturers use to hide screws because it's out of the way and it's easily concealed. The pick tool is great for getting in there. There's usually a small indentation somewhere or a clip that will allow you to get access to it. Different manufacturers have different thought processes as far as how they build their doors. Nissan does like to make panels that are removable, but they will always put some form of a clip or a panel tool input on the bottom of them. In this case, there's one located up here towards the front. The small pick tool is great to get in there, and then once you've got part of it pried off, you can put your bigger panel tool in there and get it off without doing any scratching or damaging. Nissan likes to use a Phillips 10mm screw. It's easier just to go to the 10mm because it's like a number 3 head Phillips and not a number 2. Plus, their heavy magnet bits work the best. Now keep an eye on what type of screws you are removing and where they come from. We've removed 2 screws so far and they're both different. The heads are the same, but one is a fine thread and one is a coarse thread. You don't want to mix and match where they go. Next, we'll take our panel tool and pop off the switch cover. This is also a great place that manufacturers use to hide screws.
Take your time.
Work it out slowly as to not scratch the leather or vinyl. There's another coarse thread 10mm screw behind it, and remove all clips attached to the switch panel. Check to make sure if your sail panel has to be removed. In some cases it does. In this case it is located behind our door panel, so it does not have to come off. Look around the bottom of the door panel for any extra screws that you may have missed. Sometimes they are hidden behind little lights. In this case it was not. Take your big nylon pry bar if you have one and try to get your fingers in a location in the corner and work your way out from there. Some door panels like this will simply unpop, others need to be lifted up. Go slow and take your time. If it gives you resistance and you can't get it as you're pulling on it, well then stop what you're doing and look to see if you've missed any screws or if in fact there's a panel that lifts up. In this case we're fine. Continue with pulling the door panel off. Once it's off, remove any clips that are still attached. And then remove the lock and unlock assembly. In some cases the whole assembly will unsnap, and others like this one you just simply unsnap, and usually there's some type of a hook or ball that attaches into your handles. Looking at our door, the first thing we want to do is of course remove this covering here. This is a butyl, very similar to the sticky stuff that's on the back of the aluminum. You could try to peel it, however if it doesn't, simply take a razor knife along the edge and cut it off. Remove the speaker. This is going to give us access to this area of the door panel here. You also want to plug your switches back in and roll your window up because you're going to need access to this back area here. Once you have it off, make sure you lay it somewhere flat with the sticky side up and not the sticky side down. It seems like a simple concept, but you'd be surprised. And the stuff is really sticky and gooey and will get all over everything. Now, if you're gonna be hanging out for a while, and this might be a couple day project, make sure to plug back in anything you've unplugged. In this case, we wanna plug the power window switch and locks back in so that we can roll the window up and clean behind there as well as add in any sound treatment. For us, we're going to get started right away. We want to unplug the power window switch and set it someplace safe. If you are going to be taking your time on this and maybe a couple days, be careful with the switch. Maybe wrap it in a cloth or something. You don't want it banging all against the side of the door panel. You could possibly scratch it. We need to clean the inside of the door, get out any sand, dust, dirt, or anything that's in there. Glass, vacuum out the bottom of the door if you need to. You want to make sure there's no rocks or anything like that laying around in it. The whole purpose of cleaning the inside of the door panel is so that you have a nice clean surface for the butyl to stick to. If it's dirty or sandy, yeah, it'll stick, but it might not stick the best that it can. You want it to bond and bond well. as you can see, the 4 pieces do a really good job of covering the essential areas of the door that are going to be issues. Here around the speaker, you want to make sure this is as rigid as possible. Behind the speaker and in big areas like these that are just giant flat panels that are gonna wobble, 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 wobble and do this. Looking at this door, this little area right here is as far away from the speaker as we could possibly get. We want to concentrate on this. If you're concerned with this area here, adding one more sheet would just get us the full baked potato, but this is perfect amount of coverage for most installs. Working with the product, how does it feel? How does it bend? How does it rub in?
It's awesome. I like it. You stick it in and then you pull it out because sometimes it's not straight. It's awesome. You can pull it out, stick it back in. It works fine. It works. Yeah.
Is the metal easy to rub in? Is it easy to crease?
Yep. Yep. Very flexible, so it's really good.
Looking at this area here where there's a lot of bending going on, this is usually the area that has the most creases. You did get into these holes really nice. When you are covering a door, these are all spots that need to go back in. This needs to have access to. You need to be able to get to these bolts. If this car ever breaks or the window stops, you need to be able to retain that. This all has to be serviceable when we're done. This area right here where the door panel is going to click on, you don't want to see this stuff over in here. Be very mindful of this edge. Nothing looks worse than having your sound treatment hang out below the door panel and just, gross for sure. The next step is going to be adding in those panels of foam. And according to the instructions, the places we want to put them are on these big areas right here where we have all these big solid panels behind the speaker here. These areas right here. To do that, we're going to take some measurements of the height and we're going to cut some strips out of the foam and stick it in place. Take your tape measure and go from the bottom to the top of the bar. What do we have?
6 inches.
Our next cut has to be
6 inches.
And then the one above that?
6.
We'll take the foam over to the bench and cut it for our first 6-inch strip. So measuring inside the door behind the bar frame and down is 6 inches. So we want to cut a piece of 6-inch foam. Measuring the other 2 panels up, they are also 6 inches. So we just need to make 3 cuts at 6 inches each. Let's go get these stuck in the car. All right, here you go, 3 6-inchers.
Thank you.
Now don't try to put them in over here through the little hole. Use your big hole. Before you peel the backing off, test fit them to make sure you got your measurements right. Yeah, looks good. Peel your backing off. Put them in place. Now rub all over and get as many air bubbles out as you can. You want it to stick to the panel. If it's not sticking to it, it's not gonna work. When you're satisfied with that, move on to the second one. All 3 panels behind the speaker are covered in the foam. It goes over to about here. It's nice. Wow, yeah, that stuck really well. Good job. With the door done, plug back in all the clips that you removed and add back on your vapor barrier. We're not ready to install our speakers quite yet, so we'll be installing the factory speaker back into place. With the car side of the sound treatment all done, we're gonna head over here to address the door panel or door guard side of this. Looking at our panel, we can see from the factory they've added this thin white material here. The idea there is to kill some road noise. I don't know what much it's gonna do, but it's there, and we're gonna be removing that, removing this. They melt it onto the door. That means we'll have to pull it or cut it loose because we want to put our new stuff over these big areas here, this area here. Now this becomes an interesting part. Like this whole area here minus this would be a great place to put foam. However, because this is here, this is part of the crumple zone of the car, we don't really want to remove this. What we'll be doing instead is wrapping this in some of the leftover butyl aluminum based sound treatment and making this just a really strong object. Cover these holes here, making it like a an enclosure, traps air inside. We won't have anything to worry about. This part of the car here, we want to cover. However, you have to be careful looking at this. Like, this is the piece of factory foam that they've added. As you'll notice, it is more or less level with the door panel. We don't want anything that sticks out too far. You have to be careful when adding the foam to a flat area like this that has a clip that's this short. It will compress down real thin, but there is some elasticity to it, which will force it to come back up. You don't want to shut the door and have your panel pop off because there's too thick of a material here. So just keep that in mind when adding it into specific places. 2 sheets to apply to this. Start with your biggest areas first and then move into the smaller areas with the pieces you have left. And that's what she looks like completed. The 2 sheets did do a really good job. The only area that was left over is this little spot here. I'm not real worried about that, but those nice big areas are all covered. Then we added some scrap to this part to really harden that up. This stuff is sticky. Was the gray foam as sticky as this foam?
No. Well, a little bit, yes.
Little bit? Once it's stuck on you, man, it's like, gotta rub your fingers to get the goo off. So keep your fingers clean while you're doing it. But this panel's all set and ready to go. We can get this onto the car and do a little knock test and see how it sounds and compare it to the passenger door, which doesn't have any treatment on it at all. Now, some door panels are very hard to put on if the window is still up. You may have to roll the window down. First test we're gonna do is what we call the knock test. The knock test is where you tap the metal and tap something that isn't treated to see the difference in sound. Now that is front door, rear door, and of course they're built differently. Let's switch over to that side and we'll do the passenger front door, just in case, you know, your thought is, oh, there's more bracing in the front doors. See? It's amazing. It's like so much more rigid. I want to hop in the front seat and see if I can hear any difference fading between right and left in the speaker playback. Even though these are still the factory speakers, I still want to hear the difference. One other thing too is closing the door. It sounds real heavy. If you've ever closed like a really expensive Mercedes or something like that, it just like, poof. Sounds kind of hollow and cheap, you think?
That's right.
Definitely the sound treatment is gonna help for like outside noise. Honestly, it just makes the car, I mean, just like, just closing the door sounds so much nicer.
Yes.
But we don't care about closing the door, we care about audio. First off, I'm just playing the driver's front door. Okay, so there's definitely a difference in the factory speakers.
Yeah,
this
definitely.
door, just like the whole door, radiates sound to me.
It rattles. If you're sitting right here, of course not you guys, but you can feel how it vibrates.
And it's almost like you can't pinpoint where the sound is coming from because the whole door panel is just rattling. Honestly, it's kind of weird because it sounds like there's a coaxial or something in that door on this side because there's so much other stuff moving. I believe like the door panel itself, because if you move air and it's you create sound, and it's definitely a lot more sound, good or bad, coming off that door panel, mainly bad. Whereas on this side over here, you can definitely tell that the mid bass is where it's supposed to be, and we can also turn the bass up on the radio and get a better bass response out of it. Sounds very focused and defined. It's weird. Obviously, we do a lot of cars with different types of sound treatment in them. We've never really sat in the car and A-B'd between the two, especially using something as crappy as the factory speaker.
Right.
We just know when we've done cars with sound treatment and without sound treatment, the ones with sound treatment naturally sound better. But to do this is really cool. Yeah. It's really cool. Something to think about. You know what I'm thinking about? You still got to do that door. Yeah. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. Like we said at the beginning of the show, this show is brought to you by Ground Zero. They're the sponsor of this build, and this build is far from over. We have a whole bunch of stuff in store for you on this one. It's a whole system we're doing with a DSP and speakers. In this particular car, just as a teaser, right now it has speakers in the rear deck. We're gonna be taking them out of the rear deck and of course adding sound treatment to the rear deck, which we'll show you how to do in another video. In this particular vehicle, there's an option for speakers in the rear door. I would much prefer them to be in the rear door, so we're gonna be doing sound treatment into the rear door. So technically, you still got 3 doors and a rear deck left to do. Yeah. I'll do the egg crate phone. I like that. That was I'll help you with that. All right. That sounds cool. All right, guys. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Fernando. On to the next one, guys. Or you guys have a nice night as always. We'll see you later next time. Bye. 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 It's so quiet on this side of the car, but so loud over there. I don't know what it is. It's crazy. Yeah.